I had always dreamed of traveling to Europe. The thought of it had been etched in my mind for as long as I could remember. Growing up, I would pore over pictures of the Eiffel Tower, the canals of Venice, the Colosseum in Rome, and the vibrant streets of Barcelona. Every time I imagined myself there, it felt like I was on the verge of something magical, something that would mark the culmination of all the hard work I had put into my education. It was supposed to be my moment, my reward, a recognition for everything I had sacrificed over the years to get my degree. My parents, who always seemed to understand my dreams, had promised me a trip to Europe when I graduated. This was more than just a trip to me. It was the fulfillment of a dream, a chapter of my life that I had spent years anticipating. And in my mind, nothing could go wrong. But the day I graduated, everything changed. It was a day I had imagined for so long, one filled with joy, excitement, and celebration. But what I didn't expect was the moment when my world came crashing down with a simple gesture, one that I never saw coming, one that left me standing there, questioning everything. The day began like any other, with my family gathering in the living room, all smiles and well wishes as they congratulated me on my achievement. The air was thick with excitement, the house filled with laughter and chatter. But amid all the cheer, there was something hanging in the air, an unspoken tension that I couldn't quite place. My heart raced as I waited for the moment that I had been waiting for. My parents had promised me something special, something I had longed for. I knew the day would be here, the day when they would present me with the dream vacation we had talked about so many times. I had pictured it so many times. Imagine the look on my face when I would open the envelope, the flight tickets, the travel itinerary. I couldn't wait. And then it happened. My parents exchanged a glance before my father reached under the table, pulling out a small envelope. He handed it to me, and I took it eagerly, my hands trembling with anticipation. I could hardly breathe. The excitement was so overwhelming. This was it, I thought. This was the moment. I tore open the envelope, my heart pounding in my chest, and inside, I found a small card. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. My hands froze, my mind struggling to comprehend what was in front of me. I looked down and saw a $5 coupon for a local coffee chain. A coupon. A simple, insignificant coffee coupon. I felt my stomach drop, the joy and excitement draining out of me in an instant. I blinked, convinced that this was some sort of joke, that I was being pranked. But it wasn't a joke. It was real, and it was in my hands. I could hear the buzz of conversation around me, but it felt distant, like I was trapped in a bubble, unable to connect with anyone. My parents were smiling at me, waiting for my reaction, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My thoughts were a jumble, spinning in circles. Where was the vacation? Where were the tickets? Where was the promise they had made? I looked around, my heart racing, searching for some sign that this was just a misunderstanding, that something had gone wrong. But all I saw were smiles, eager eyes, waiting for me to react. I tried to smile, to force a reaction, but it felt like my face wouldn't cooperate. How could I smile when everything I had been dreaming of had just been shattered in front of me? I looked at my father, my voice barely above a whisper, as I asked the question that had been burning in my chest. Why? It was a simple question, one that I thought would explain everything, but it wasn't enough. My father's smile faded slightly, and he sighed, running a hand through his hair. We just couldn't afford it, sweetheart. We wanted to, we really did. But things didn't work out the way we had hoped. We thought you'd appreciate this instead. A little something for now. A little something. A $5 coupon. My mind screamed with disbelief. I tried to keep it together to understand, but I couldn't. I had worked so hard for this moment, sacrificed so much, and this was what I got in return. A coffee coupon. I wanted to cry, to shout, to demand answers. But I couldn't. Instead, I stared at the card in my hand, my thoughts swirling in a haze. My parents were still smiling, waiting for me to react, to be happy, to be grateful for the small token they had given me. But how could I be happy with this? How could I pretend that this was enough when all I had wanted was to finally experience the world, to see the places I had dreamed of, to step out of the life I had known and into something new. The disappointment was suffocating, and it felt like I was drowning in it. I looked at my sister, who had been watching the entire exchange with a puzzled expression. She didn't understand, couldn't understand what I was feeling, and I didn't blame her.
How could she?
She hadn't been there, hadn't lived with the weight of this dream for years. But I knew she didn't have the same expectations, didn't have the same desire to experience the world outside our little bubble. She had her own life, her own plans, and she didn't have to worry about empty promises. "Are you okay?" My sister asked quietly, her voice full of concern, but I didn't know how to answer. I wasn't okay. I wasn't okay with the way everything had turned out, but I didn't have the courage to say it. So I smiled weakly, forced the words out, and thanked them. I thanked my parents for the coupon, for their thoughtfulness, even though all I wanted to do was throw it away, to scream at the unfairness of it all. But I didn't. I sat there, silent, the disappointment gnawing at me, the weight of unfulfilled promises sitting heavy in my chest. The night went on, and my family continued to celebrate my graduation. But I couldn't bring myself to join in. Every laugh, every cheer felt like it was happening in a world far away from mine. I wanted to be happy, I wanted to feel the joy that everyone else seemed to be feeling, but I couldn't. All I could feel was the sting of betrayal, the ache of broken promises. I spent the rest of the evening trying to hide my disappointment, trying to smile for the sake of my family. But deep down, I knew I would never forget this moment. I would never forget the feeling of having my dreams dashed by something so small, so insignificant, that it made me question everything. It wasn't just the trip I had lost, it was the trust one had placed in my family, in their promises, in the belief that I was worthy of something more than a coffee coupon. In the days that followed, I found myself dwelling on the situation, replaying the events over and over in my mind. I understood the financial constraints my parents had, but it didn't make the hurt go away. The realization that I had been led to believe in something that wasn't true, that I had been holding on to a dream that was never meant to come true, was harder to accept than I had imagined. I spent a long time reflecting on what had happened, trying to make sense of it all. Eventually, I came to terms with the fact that life doesn't always go as planned, that sometimes things don't work out the way we expect. But that doesn't mean we should stop dreaming or stop hoping. My dream of traveling to Europe didn't come true that year, but that didn't mean it would never come true. I realized that I had to take control of my own destiny, that I had the power to create my own future. Maybe it wasn't the trip I had imagined, but it was the start of something new, something that I could make my own. And one day, I would get there on my own terms.